2020 is shaping up. It's looking pretty weird, but the grass is green where you water it. I am your host, Devon, and you are listening to another episode of Center of the Sun podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope you're paying attention to the news. There is a lot going on in terms of presidents and illnesses and all kinds of threats to our health. But you are a light in this sea of darkness. But is the darkness all that bad? I mean, well, if you're Nicki Minaj, can we start there? It's very compelling. It's very dark. It's very scary. She and her husband have been embroiled in another scandal for some odd reason. On Twitter, I have learned that her husband, Nicki Minaj's husband, Kenneth Petty or someone like that, has been is in trouble again for, I guess, failing to register as a sex offender. I don't know. This comes on the heels of other scandals, unfortunately, with her brother involved in similar acts of violence against people who they should not be touching. But, you know, I'm not really going to dwell on it, but I'm sad for her. Nicki Minaj, if you're listening to this, I hope that you find some sort of like resolution to these issues, because I am going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't think you're choosing these people on purpose. I don't think you're protecting these people on purpose. I think this is a coincidence, but there comes a certain point in time where you just have to say, fool me once, shame on me, but fool me twice. I don't know. Like, it might be my phone. Like, what do you think? It's so weird. I apologize for the late episode this week, but I didn't know what to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the number 5. We're talking about Mercury, and it's interesting. Number 5 is interesting, but how are you doing today? Thank you for listening. There are so many things going on in the news. First of all, my heart goes out to the people in Tennessee who were like blown away by a fucking tornado. What the fuck is going on? What the hell's going on with the world? I'm so confused. There was a report on, I believe, like CBS or somewhere, where I watched it at work because we have a TV in the clinic. There was a couple, and this is so odd, like Wizard of Oz, like literally, this is so Wizard of Oz. There was a couple that woke up in the middle of the night to the loud ass emergency alarm on your phone when like there's an Amber Alert or something, but you also get them with the tornado. And the husband woke up and that was the tornado warning, and then they heard of the roar of the motherfucking tornado. I just cannot even imagine what a tornado sounds like, but I don't want to be in that bitch. Their house was picked up by a tornado. Luckily, they thought to get in the tub. I don't know. I know to get in the tub. I didn't, but they were holding on to each other and they survived, and they were picked up for like a mile and thrown in their house across their town in their bathtub, and they lived. And the wife, or not the wife, because they weren't married, because actually she proposed to him after this. And they said it on TV like it was like nonchalant. I was like, I guess we're in 2020. Like, oh, snap. But the wife split her forehead open, and the husband had a bruise. And they were picked up in a tornado, Wizard of Oz style, and they were thrown across their town. I am astounded. I don't know if this is Mother Nature or if this is like a conspiracy with the government. Like, what the fuck is going on with these tornadoes? Like, how are you picked up? Anyway, they survived, but like, I think like over 20 people have died, and this tragic tornado in Tennessee. In addition, Joe Biden has surged in the polls for the U.S. presidential election. I am actually happy that he's surging in the polls. Unfortunately, I'm a never Trumper and a never Bernie, unfortunately. And I'm a never Bernie ever since 2016 because I've always been very uncomfortable with the fact that he has all of these ideas, but as a senator of 30 years, I only knew about him in 2016, but he's like a revolutionary. You know, like, oh my God, like make America better than. And I didn't like the reporting by the New York Times. Those are my two issues. And those have always been my issues with Bernie Sanders. His policies are great. You know, I'm a radical, but I'm a radical within reason. And I would like sustainability. And if we're going to dismantle our world, it's not going to be with the Bernie white supremacist Bernie bros or whatever the hell. Dismantling white supremacy is exactly my radical take on all of this. And Bernie Sanders isn't going to do it for me. So, you know, I'm going to choose Joe Biden because he's moderate enough that people will vote for him. And I think he can beat Trump. And that's literally all I want is like our government to be better again. Make the U.S. government great again. Maybe my retirement is in the U.S. stock market. I need this shit to be sustainable. I don't need Russia and Ukraine and all these bitches coming out influencing our shit. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren, another nominee, dropped out today. I didn't really know much about her either. I didn't like the Pocahontas thing. That was weird. She never really explained that. I got in a fight on Twitter with some Native Americans. They were big mad about it. But that's the 2020 election. I expected her to drop out because I think Joe Biden did a really good job of dismantling her like wealth tax thing. Like in the first debate of the Democratic primaries or whatever the fuck, or the to pick the nominee, he very clearly was like, well, you know, how are you going to pay for, you know, he just was able to just dismantle her argument very quickly. And I didn't really see it for her even at the first debate. So Elizabeth Warren dropped out, unfortunately. Mike Bloomberg dropped out. I would have taken Mike Bloomberg just for the simple fact that he's just so dry. You know, he can be easily influenced, obviously. So, but he's a terrible leader. I'm glad he dropped out. I'm glad no one liked him. But I would have voted for him. I would have never voted for Pete Buttigieg, whatever the hell. He's weird. Who else? I'm glad he dropped out. Andrew Yang. Oh, I liked Andrew Yang. See, I'm radical. See, Andrew Yang was kind of radical like that. Like, value people. Like, that's all I'm worried about. And if we're going to have a revolution, like, can we at least, like, make sure it's fair and make sure, or, like, if we're going to maintain the same shit, like, can we make it fair, too? And I really like Andrew Yang's idea for, like, taxing the wealthy or whatever the fuck. But through technology, you know, our use of technology, I thought that was really awesome and revolutionary, maybe, in like individual basic income or whatever the fuck it's called. That is a great idea. I would love to not fucking work. Oh my God. And live my best life and be productive and still, you know, be very productive. Like, can I not have to fucking be a slave to but I'm not a slave, but like potentially, like most people are slaves to their job. Like, I love my job, but anyway, like, let's clear that up. Like, I'm very blessed. Like, oh my God. Anyway, how are you doing? Please send your thoughts, your questions, your concerns to host at centersun21.com. Thank you for listening. I'm Devon. We're going to talk about number 5 today. Number 5 is the planet Mercury. It's very interesting. And it's just like, numerology is such a weird topic because I don't know how to apply it to life. Like, who the fuck cares about like numbers and like planets? Like, what does it have to do with like Bernie Sanders? And what does it have to do with Joe Biden? Well, really nothing. What does it have to do with like Nicki Minaj? You know, like, what does it have to do with it? Like anything? Like, it's not practical, but is it? Today, I kind of want to give like a different take on numerology. because I do think it does have practical applications, and the applications have been, validated over thousands of years. Oh my God. Can we just pause for like one moment? Like, I was watching Ancient Aliens. No, I was watching something else, but it led me to Ancient Aliens. And apparently in 2014, and this is the kind of shit that we talk about on this show because it's like, where was the announcement? There have been ruins that are found, and this might be a hoax or whatever, an inversion or whatever it is, but I believe that like people are starting to agree with this because we don't think humans are that old, or that there were beings here prior to humans that had the ability to build things. But even on the fucking History Channel, they fucking hide it, but not really hide it, but it's just they make it obscure so you don't like believe it because they always attach aliens to it. But I'm like, wait, it's the same structures, it's the same pattern. And 12,000 years ago, there is a structure that is still standing from that time that is 7,000 years older than the pyramids. So like what we thought like was the first iteration of like human intelligence is actually, we're some byproduct of some other society or whatever, or some other kind of beings. I don't really know how to explain it, but the things we assume are true about our reality aren't always clear cut, black and white. Sometimes our ideas are drawn from a time that we consider the Stone Age, where they used to make shit out of stones, but that shit is still standing. And the carbon dating and all that kind of stuff, there is evidence that, there were advanced humans, or beings like us, because there was kind of a gap. There was really nothing else, no other evidence. It's probably destroyed. We're probably being slowly walked into like a fucking trap or something around this information. But I think it's valuable, and I wanted to just pause right there because I just thought that was cool. Like, humans, we think they were just like they're hunter-gatherers. That's the issue. They assumed that the humans back then were just hunter-gatherers, but they had like temples and shit like that were like numbers. And the thing that I wanted to highlight about that society, and I wish I knew what the society was called or what the site is called. It's like in Iran or Turkey or somewhere where they uncovered this stuff. It was buried on purpose, but the temples have certain numbers of stones, and they all revolve around the number 12, and they have symbols of snakes and penises and all kind of weird shit that is exactly the same as the earliest statues we have. So obviously there's a connection, but something was lost. So unfortunately, it's being uncovered very slowly, but we are getting something. So I thought that was very interesting because of the number 12. And the number 12, ultimately, when you add the 1 and the 2, is a 3. So I think we'll talk about 3 at another time, but 3 represents something very specific. But today we're going to talk about the number 5, which represents Mercury. 3,000 years ago, there was the first writings or whatever it is, the Hindu or the Asians, some people in Asia, they wrote down some shit about the stars and about the zodiac, and they use the stars to heal themselves. They use the stars as healthcare. And there is a book that I read, I forget what it was, but it was about medical astrology. And it's a 3,000-year-old practice, but it's a medical practice. And humans back then, they didn't have distractions. There were no phones. There were no TVs. There were no magazines, or seemingly, there were temples and stuff, but we don't have any indication that there was any sort of media or electronics back then. There was probably something, but we don't know. But what do you do when you don't have any distractions? You tend to just sit and think about something at the very least. So humans didn't have any distractions but their environment. And humans have observed the stars for thousands of years, and we always connect our being with the stars. And some people even believe that we're from the stars or whatever it is, but 3,000 years ago, humans began connecting the position of the planets and the sun in the sky to their own feelings. So they would start seeing the patterns of how the planets and the stars moved, and they interpreted those feelings by telling stories. So that's how we got images of gods and stuff, because you go inside your mind and you just start like thinking of stuff, and then you want to remember it, so you tell a story so it sticks. That's how you got, your Greek gods and your mythology and all that kind of stuff. That's how you get fantasy and Harry Potter. You kind of just go within and you ponder, and then you get these things out of your consciousness. And without the distraction of TV and big cities and lights and all that kind of shit, you tend to go within, and then you find information from within. And in the modern day, we assume the feelings and stories of ancient people were literal. Like, we think that there was like a being with like 6 hands and came down from the sky in a chariot thing or whatever it is. But this what if they were just interpreting their feelings and trying to remember their feelings, but they had to tell a story, just like we use the Bible, just like we go to therapy or whatever it is, like you kind of tell a story. Astrology is the most modern iteration of this, medical astrology, but just like vanity astrology, just regular astrology, it has morphed over time into something that has remained true. And when we observe the sky, we also see the same patterns. And that's the weird thing about the universe, is that it hasn't, even though we're spiraling through space and at this speed and the stars don't change. So are we moving with the stars? I thought infinite space, I thought it was expanding, or all the things that we are told are true. It's how? Nothing changed. We still use the same shit. And so that's why I wanted to touch on medical astrology, because we've been able to confirm that the position of the stars varies in certain kinds of ways, but overall it's consistent. And it's consistent enough to create a system of healthcare that we have validated with modern science today. And I literally just saw Paris Hilton on The Real, or whatever the fucking show is, talking about how you manifest and you store your feelings in your organs. And it's that thing. It's that realm. But I didn't know it was so scientific. And it's kind of cool. And when I think about all of this stuff, it's actually catches me off guard, because then I realize oh my God, these countries that have writings this old, they fucking they have 1 billion or plus people in their country. And it begs the question, should you practice medical astrology? Should you look at the stars and change your behavior based on the stars or the position of the sun? And just like numerology, it's a framework, but it's based on math, really interesting math and personal anecdotes. And it's validated with our modern science. And when I say modern science, I put it in quotes, because I'm I don't know. I don't know, because I work in a clinic and I don't think anybody in my clinic, they would believe me. But what is medical astrology? Because you're probably what am I going to do? What does Leo have to do with anything? Well, medical astrology is a form of cosmology that separates our visible reality into 3 parts, okay? So there's the earth, there's the atmosphere, and then there's space. And ancient people described their observations and their feelings as gods. And I think it's because they they just considered them like ultimate or like universal truths about the universe. And people worship planets, and we still kind of do, like through modern astrology. People like they worship planets and stars because they didn't understand the origin of the truths. They didn't have the technology, or we don't believe that they did, but seemingly they didn't have the technology to understand the origin of their feelings. And we still really don't know why starlight affects us. We don't know why we can observe the patterns on Earth that correspond with the movement of the planets. But we are familiar with witchcraft. We are familiar with astrology and mythology and naturopathy and other rituals that use elements associated with the heavenly bodies at certain times, with the moonlight and the starlight and it's weird, the witching hour, like you got to kind of like think about it. And normally all of this is attributed to some sort of like physical similarities. You you go get a bone to represent a bone, or you go to get a shell, like you start to realize that symbols like animals and numbers and shapes, places and organisms, when you observe them, sometimes they correspond and sometimes they have similar physical attributes. And then those physical attributes are related to the stars. And ancient Egyptians, for instance, when somebody died, they removed parts of the brain and parts of the body and put them in special things for the and the pyramid is positioned specifically with the stars and all this kind of stuff. They removed parts of the body after death because they corresponded to some physical attribute of a larger planet or a constellation. And that was the kind of the basis. Or the Christians, the Christians eat the body and the blood on the first Sunday of on a Sunday with the sun, like everything is related to the position of the stars and the planets. And this, sometimes I feel like it feels a little too good to be true, because we have mastered chemistry, we've mastered physics, we've mastered all kinds of things about a reality, but meditation on these energies is the only way to be sure. Just like the ancient people, you have to eliminate all distractions and then just ponder the fucking stars. Number 5 is something that I want you to ponder. And number 5 is associated specifically with intellect. When ancient people meditated on the number 5 and they observed Mercury in the sky, and Mercury is an interesting planet because it has a twin or something, or it's seen in the morning and the night or something like that. But when people noticed Mercury, they associated Mercury with intellect and thinking and higher thought. And when ancient people meditated on and observed Mercury, they realized that people had more energy, and they had more energy to talk and joke and use humor. On the flip side, though, sometimes when ancient people observed these planets and these numbers and stuff like that, they also realized that it led to people to be more counterproductive. So when you observed Mercury in the sky, like, you had to realize that it could have an effect on you, and they led the conversation with more anecdotes and stuff like that. But they used it to guide their actions. That's the point. Even though they associated certain attributes with it, when they observed it, they used that as a cue. For instance, when something, like Mercury is, good in some regards, but like when you touch it, it can be poisonous to you. Like, there is always a balance, and you always have to be conscious of that. And so Mercury, the number 5, it just makes you more mindful. And in order to strike balance, you can use certain plants and gems and animals and stuff like that that are associated with Mercury to kind of sort of counteract your bad or your inefficiencies or whatever it is. So that's why people wear crystals and stuff to kind of center themselves or make themselves more mindful, so they think about certain things, and they use all of this kind of is used to guide their actions. So that's kind of the practical application. That's kind of what I've been trying to find about numerology, is that not only is it fun, but there is a medical aspect to it, specifically mental health or whatever it is. There are organs in your body that are associated with the planet Mercury, your chakras and stuff like that. There's a ball of nerves that is affected most by the planet Mercury. And that is medical astrology. You know, every planet, every number has its purpose. And that's why Asia has 1 billion fucking people. Stories of deities helped people remember these rules of life. That's kind of the purpose. There's like a certain way to live, and in order to remember these certain ways and for the survival of the species, they used these social cues. So what do you think? I think it's pretty interesting. I think the number 5 is one of my favorites. I just it just feels good. It was very easy to, even though it was very hard to do it on time, it was very easy to make this episode because I was able to just ponder and just think about Mercury. You know, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. It's the first planet. So it's like the way that it's radiating, the way that it's just weird. You know, this planet is being scorched by the sun, yet the way whatever is on that planet, you know, whatever's reflecting from off the sun is coming down on us, and it's affecting our actions. So what do you think? Send me your thoughts. Host at centersun21.com. Also, you can subscribe to my blog for free forever. For updates, there's a newsletter. There's premium content at devaughn.org. It's spelled DVAUGHN.org. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you have a great day.